the weekly show with David J. Maloney.
This week, David chats with the sweet drummer, Richie Onori.
And now, here's your host, David J. Maloney.
Welcome, everyone, to the weekly show. I'm your host, David J. Maloney. On tonight's show, we've got a really special guest. He's one of those musicians who's recorded with anyone and everyone in the rock recording industry and has left his mark on multiple tracks and albums across the years. Now, as the drummer for the glam rock band Sweet, or The Sweet, as formerly known, he's once again touring the world. Here after the break, to chat about it all, is drummer Richie Onori. So don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. Our featured guest tonight has a CV which could rival some of the most decorated studio musicians working today, having laid down tracks for countless rock stars in the recording industry. Now, as the drummer for the band The Sweet, also known as Sweet, he has found himself touring the world once again, whilst creating new music all along the way. Here to chat about his music journey is drummer Richie Onori. Richie, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Good to be here.
So, Richie, it's simply incredible the amount of industry heavyweights you've worked with and for. I'd kind of like to know first how the music journey started for you, though. How early in your life did you realize that making music was what you wanted to do? And what do you remember about that moment?
Well, it was when I first saw the first Sparkle drum set, and I was just... it was at my uncle's house, and he had some drums up in his area, and I just was taken by it. So I started beating on cans and drums. I started off in dance at a young age, but when I saw music, when I saw that I could play, I just got into it at 11 years old. Yeah.
So everybody's got kind of their first big break story. What is yours? Did you get noticed while playing at a bar, a gig, somewhere else?
Well, I played in quite a few bands, and that was just coming up. I was singing behind the drums, and then playing in a bunch of, those were the days of garage bands. And so music was alive. Everybody knew that they wanted to either be the Rolling Stone or the Doors or something. It was the age. It was a renaissance in music. So we just realized that I just realized that, boy, I want to join a band and really get out there. So I don't know if I answered that question. Give it to me again.
I was asking how you kind of got your first big break. Were you noticed playing a bar, a gig, something else?
Well, we were in a battle of the bands and we won. And so that was big. And then at the same time, what happened was that at about 17, 18, I joined a group from Detroit that came out. They had already had a #1 hit called Question Mark and the Mysterians, 96 Tears. Came from Detroit and came to Los Angeles, and him and his manager was looking for a band. So I auditioned for that and I got the gig. And I didn't play a long time, but that was enough to kind of get me in the limelight on it with a national act at like 17, 18 years old.
Yeah, and Question Mark, as I recall, had his name formally. Did he actually have his name formally changed to Question Mark?
Yeah. He was the first Prince, I'll tell you. He looked like Prince. It seemed like Prince took his whole thing from him because he's still alive. He's just an interesting cat. And he had, when he came out on stage, he had a little question. He had his belly button as the dot on the question mark, and then he had it all in, and he's this little petite little guy, and he was something else, man. Yeah. We played for a few months, and that was kind of the end of that. We played some concerts in LA, but that was, meanwhile, I was playing up in these jams up in the mountains with a generator, playing for the Hells Angels with a generator, just me and a guitarist that played like Jimi Hendrix and Richie Blackmore, and he played with the vibrato, and we'd play things like Highway Star Twice as Fast, and because we had no bass player at that time, and it'd be like 2,000-3,000 people would show up at these things, and so we became this kind of in the San Fernando Valley, and everybody knew us. And so when I joined my first band with Chuck Wright and Pat Reagan, and we formed a band called Satyr, Satyr, we became like that band already had a huge following, and we're off to the races.
That's so cool. In the same vein, Slash's name stands out to a lot of us. Well, because he's such an iconic artist.
I never recorded with Slash. I don't
Oh,
know if
wow.
it's misquoted on the website, but I had played with him and Lukather at a benefit for Katrina. Hurricane Katrina, when that happened, we played at and now I think it was called Billboard Live or Key Club. And so Slash, I was the drummer that played with everybody that day, and Howard Leese and that whole thing. So Slash got up and played with Lukather, and we did a few songs, and so yeah, it was great. It was, that was one of the first times I played with Keith too. Keith was on that, and that's how that whole thing happened. From everybody you could imagine, and Spencer Davis, and I was the
Oh,
guy
wow.
that
That's
played
kind of
behind
cool.
everybody. But that's been my story. I've been able to just play with so many different people over the years.
That's awesome. And we had David Page from Toto on the show. Did you ever get a chance to play actually with any of the other folks in Toto? Because I thought I saw a story about that somewhere.
Yeah, I was Bobby Kimball's drummer for a while. And so we toured together, and playing with Bobby was amazing because I did Jeff Baccaro's drum video, his instructional video. I took lessons from Joe Baccaro. So all of a sudden I was involved with that company Starlix. And so when Jeff did it, Joe called me and he says, "Hey, you want to be the musical director on Jeff's video?" Well, I did that, and that was amazing. That was before he passed away, that's the only video of Jeff. And so after that, um, not related to that, I got the call about Bobby needs a drummer. And so I had to learn the complete Toto set. We're playing a 10,000 seater in Illinois and no rehearsal. I had to learn the whole Toto set in 3 days and then go play a 10,000 seater. And it was, it was a challenge, man, to learn all. I mean, I already was hep to Piccaro's, because his father said both of us are kind of like street drummers, even though we got jazz chops and all that stuff. So I was able to do that, and I kept that gig for quite a long time with Kimball until I think he went to Europe, or I forget it. Oh, I brought him in to bury the hatchet with Lukather at the Baked Potato. I said, "Bobby, come on, man, bury the hatchet with Lukather." So we walked in the Baked Potato. We walked in, and I'll never forget it, man. They looked at each other, and they online they were like fighting all the time, insults. They saw each other, they gave a big hug each other, and next thing you know, they put Toto back together with Bobby in the band. And it was nice I never got the call because they ended up getting Simon Phillips. So what can I say?
That brings us now to your current run with Sweet. How much did you know about the band before you first met the guys? Were they very familiar to you from, were they very familiar to you from your normal listening through the years? Had you seen them live? What did you know about them at that time?
I didn't know anything about them except knowing the songs and a few of the key songs. I had no idea because in America, now that I've been in the band for close to 2 decades, now I know all about it. Why Sweet wasn't exposed in the United States except Desolation Boulevard and some of these records, and a lot of fans that picked up on it. But no, it was a kind of situation where there was a lot of things. Steve Priest told me the reason they didn't become a household name with the name, but they knew the songs. So for me, I just was like, okay. I started studying the band, and I realized that Mick Tucker studied Buddy Rich and Gene Krupa. And just sort of like when I talked to Roger Taylor when they came to the United States the first time, that was Roger's thing. When I talked to him, it was about Krupa, and same with, and also Ian Pace from Deep Purple. I was as far as that, I was, Speed King, all those kind of things. That takes a lot of chops to do that. So when I heard Mick Tucker play, I was like, whoa. And that's where I was like, okay. And I started getting into their catalog. And when I heard those songs and I played with Steve Priest at that doing this, I totally got it. It was like, wow. It was like a discovery for me.
Yeah, and how exciting or challenging, I mean, has it been to be part of this kind of immense, it's cultural, band like Sweet? I mean, especially with the band being so recognized overseas, even if it was not so much here in the US. I mean, how exciting has that been to be kind of part of the iteration of the band that's possibly going to maybe even change the fact and get you guys even more known in the US?
Well, it was amazing. I mean, I feel very honored when Steve Priest, after he heard me play that Katrina benefit, he came to me and said, "Hey, I'm coming out of retirement. If you want to put Sweet back together, a reformed version here," and he cut certain members that had played there and so we're cut right into that legacy, and to become a partner in it. It was really like there's only so many bands from the 70s that were available and brands like that where I could really attach myself and put my talent behind. And then when I started hearing Sweet FA and Set Me Free, and not just the bubblegum stuff, but Fox on the Run and Ballroom Blitz. And Sandy Nelson was a great surf drummer, and I grew up with Sandy Nelson. That was another tie-in with that. That's a Sandy Nelson lick in Ballroom Blitz. So it was like, wow, this is super cool. I'm getting this, and I'm really honored. Yes.
Well, speaking of the bubblegum stuff, how did you guys first find out your song Fox on the Run was going to be featured on Marvel's blockbuster Guardians of the Galaxy?
Well, Maureen, actually, I got a call from CMA, or what is it? It's the major booking agency, and Maureen, with Steve Priest's wife. And so they asked me to go down for the viewing, the big thing at Kodak Theater, the premiere, sorry.
Yeah.
For the premiere, and I was the one to be representing Sweet. So I went right down with all the, everybody's asking all the stars that were in the movie. And so I'm by myself, right? And I'm going right down the list, and I'm talking to everybody, hey, so, blah, blah, Fox on the Run. And then lo and behold, I'm by myself sitting there in the Kodak Theater, I think it's called, where they do the Academy Awards. And I'm sitting there, and now all the stars, Stallone and everybody, they all come out on, guess what song? Fox on the Run. I mean, there was ELO songs and George Harrison. What song did they pick to enter the stage? And I was kind of looking around going,
That's funny you should mention Jeff Lynne, because sometimes when I hear that song, the vocal backings and the way that they're layered in some ways has kind of either ELO has your band's feel, or you has that song that has a little bit of a ELO feel to it. That had to be big for you guys. I mean, what did that mean to the band? And I mean, especially someone like Steve Priest, who's been there from the very beginning, to kind of get finally that, especially kind of the additional recognition that you get in the States that maybe they hadn't enjoyed before.
it meant a lot. I mean, when we started going out again and people knew those songs, a lot of people say, "Isn't that ELO?" That's you could, and then to finally play so many shows with so many great bands. When we toured with Journey down in South America, as we just started going around, I mean, it was funny. They knew that song, but when we played down there in South America, we did the tour with Journey. We played Little Willie. Well, Little Willie was never a hit in South America. And so here in America, everybody would get up, little, go home, do this whole thing. They were just going, what is this song? It's pretty funny. But but what we do with Love is Like Oxygen with Jimmy Burkhardt on guitar now, we do an exchange, and this band now is just, oh my God, it's really a highlight with that. People want theater, and that's what Love is Like Oxygen is. It's the big, elated, big thing in the middle that goes through a lot of changes, and then this big climax at the end. It's ba-da-da-da, ba-da-da. It's such a strong song, very well constructed.
Well, and I want to talk about some of the newer stuff, but there was one other one I was going to touch on that you mentioned earlier, which was Ballroom Blitz, because it's crazy to think that a lot of people these days remember it because of another movie, Wayne's World. And it just kind of goes to show how much of an impact the band has actually had through the years without necessarily getting that, local name recognition it deserved earlier. I mean, that's just another one of those ones that, people remember because of yet another iconic movie, right?
Yeah, I mean, it just keeps on going. Wayne's World, and then Suicide Squad, Black Phone recently. And if you check a lot of these new series that are series up, you'll hear it. I mean, I hear it constantly. Songs are just constantly going through. So what it does is the young people go, "What is that song? What is that Fox on the Run?" I mean, each generation, we're so far up the food chain, so to speak, age-wise demographics, but they keep on just embracing it. And it's such a mantra: blitz, blitz, the ballroom blitz. Everybody sings that. So we've got a lot of things in the future that we're getting ready to go with that chant. That's
Well,
gonna
let's
even
talk about that a little bit. Tell us about some of the most recent songs you guys have been putting out, and kind of what's up on the horizon for you guys.
Well, what we've got is we put out Little Miracle, and that got great, great reviews, and we're excited about that. And it continues to grow, Little Miracle. And that was more of a pop sense approach. And then most recent, we just released a couple days ago, our guitarist Jimmy came up with this fantastic lick, and we constructed things right. We're starting to write as a band in the studio, which instead of a preconceived notion, which I like both. But at the same time, when you write as a band, it's really something. And so here we are today in Edmonton, Canada. And as we're flying on the plane we're playing the River Cree up here, we're talking about a new song that we're getting ready to do. But before I go into that, we have a song called Insane that Jimmy wrote that lick. And it's real hard rock. I mean, it's kind of like Set Me Free on steroids, and it's even heavier than that, and it has all the harmonies, and that's 21st century sweet. That's where we're headed on so many levels. But what's amazing about the original band is there was no limitations to genres. Basically it was sky's the limit. So we've got Insane that's being released, and then the next one we're going to do is something that we recorded with Steve Priest, who he played. It's called Sweet Dream, and we have that track, and now we're building that track again, and that will be our next release where Steve sang on it, and that will be a beautiful tie-in since Steve passed away in 20. It's going to be a very great song, and then we're going to go into another song. We're going to keep on releasing these songs, which is it's going to be an epic song. It's going to be a little progressive too. See, that's what a lot of people don't realize. Sweet had a progressive side to themselves too.
Well, and when you mentioned some of the different, when you mention things like an ELO sound or whatever, people don't always think of ELO in that way. But, when you look at certain bands like that and a lot of the other bands you mentioned throughout this interview, this is a lot of progressiveness in there. So I can
Exactly.
see some of that influence. And of the stuff that you guys have recently put out, and the stuff that you just rattled off of, as far as all the new things you've got coming out, is there a particular song that kind of surprised you the most with how well it turned out?
I think A Little Miracle was just really well done. It's got a little bit of a funk groove to it, and it's just got something fresh in it that I thought that, again, it's very palatable to the feminine side too. And the video that we did, I think it's very clever, and I think it captured us. But I like everything this band is doing right now, because when you have the right chemistry of guys, something happens. It reminds me of my early days with Satter. There was that's when we were rehearsed 7 days a week, 6 hours a day. It's like what Leonard Skinner did with their band. That's why they rose to be great, because you have that passion when you're in your early 20s, and that's all you got is your music, and you just go for it. And it's the same kind of energy that I feel with this band now, with Sweet. It's very exciting.
Well, and as you kind of look back on your career, do you have a particular like music memory or interesting event that happened with somebody that you work with, like a story that either you haven't told before or your favorite one to tell?
Being 18, 19, and all of a sudden finding out about Sound City is just a few blocks away from where I grew up, which we all know about because of Nirvana. And then to be associated with that studio at that young age, and seeing Stevie and Lindsay play at some Encino parties in the Valley, San Fernando Valley as when she was working for Bob's Big Boy, and they were just a little duo, her and Lindsay. To see what happened in that situation, how Mick Fleetwood met him at Sound City, and I went down at Buckingham Nicks and I heard him laying the first tracks for Fleetwood Mac. And when that whole thing came together, I was like, and I met Stevie. I walked in the studio and she had these bell-bottom jeans and the long blonde hair, and I had a beautiful girlfriend at the time. But I got to tell you, when that voice came out of her and she started singing, if you're a Stevie fan or not, I'll tell you, face to face, it was like an angel. It was like, so those kind of things happen, those opportunities. But there's been so many great experiences of so many things when we had so many fans at the Starwood and then pounding and then playing, all these great shows all around the world with so many different things. So see, a lot of musicians, they only get like in one band, they join Rat and that's their whole legacy. With me, being a cross section, playing with so many people, it's given me so many different experiences to tell about growing up in Hollywood, growing up in the LA scene, and being exposed to so many different areas. I mean, playing with Larry Carlton and Buddy Burnell. I mean, playing with Les Paul. I mean, playing with, so many different cats. I mean, I could go on and on and on. Robbie Krieger, all these guys have the opportunity with play, as a kid, you listen to the first Light My Fire and then you're on stage with Krieger and you're playing with all these people. And then you say, hey, you know what? I'm a good player, man. I'm right up on everybody's level. I might not have that notoriety at that time, but no problem. I'm ready, and that's been my, I started off with jazz. I played with Rick Zunigar. He was on Stevie Wonder's Key to Life. Before he played in that, I was in a jazz trio with a quartet with him. And so, when you have those early chops and you get a lot of confidence,
Well, that's cool. And like it's just to be able to work with so many luminaries. That's just so cool. So
Yeah.
Where can people follow you and the band now on your various social media platforms?
Well, Sweet is thesweetband.com. Okay, thesweetband.com. You can find me under the bluesmessenger.com for my music. And that's going to be expanding very quickly. My nonprofit is People for a New America, PFANAUSA.org. And I just produced a Unity, Peace, and Freedom Festival with everybody you could imagine, which was sweet. It was the Blues Angel, my band. I changed it from Blues Messenger to Blues Angel. And boy, what a day. So it's about purpose. It's about bringing everybody together. And now we're very involved with the veterans, both in Canada and the US. We're going to be doing some major festivals. I've just done a bunch of spots. So it's giving back and using music as a tool to bring people together and bring funds in for our veterans and for all walks of life. That's what I stand for. You have to have a purpose in life, and I guess I'm pretty ambitious when it comes to that.
Richie, thank you so much for joining us today, man. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Yeah, I thank you're totally welcome, and it's thank you for great questions, and I found it quite inspiring and got my juices flowing today before our show tonight in Edmonton.
Well, I'm sure everybody's going to love it. Thank you so much for joining us, ladies and gentlemen. Richie Onori. That's our show for tonight. Thank you so much for watching, and a special thanks to Richie Onori for joining us. Stay safe, everyone.